Hey, welcome to HR Famous, brought to you by Kinetics, the leading RPO recruiting firm for growth companies. Named by HRO Today as the top midsize RPO provider, Kinetics uses its unique skill-based recruiter model to deliver on RPO engagements, allowing them to customize scope to meet your unique hiring needs. If you have recruiting challenges and want to consider RPO as a solution, give Kinetics a call. Find them online at kineticshr.com. HR Famous is also brought to you by HRU Tech, a contingent staffing firm specializing in engineering, IT, and technically related placements across multiple industries. If you're looking for technical talent or searching for a career, look no further than HRU Tech. Find them online at hrutech.com and call them today. Hey, what's up, everybody? HR Famous Podcast. I'm Kris Dunn. Great to be back with you. We're dropping this episode as a follow-up to the conversation Jessica Lee and myself had about the return to work mechanism that's going on in America today. And no better guest to help us sort through that than Ed Baldwin, who is the head of HR for Micron, a high-end manufacturing firm based in Denver, stateside, somebody I've known for a long time. Ed, come on in here to HR Famous. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing great, and I appreciate the fact that you would kind of be our practitioner in the field, like thinking about this return to work thing. You know, you and I have the opportunity. You write for us at Fistful of Talent. I've known you for at least 6, 7, 8 years now. We have the opportunity to talk every once in a while, and you know, we talked during this COVID period, and one of the things that kind of jumped out at me and why I wanted to have you on is while the rest of America is kind of scrambling a little bit to figure out this return to work thing, you know, I know Micron, you know, where you're a part of the team and you lead HR. I know Micron had it figured out, and these are my words, not yours, but I think you and the leadership team there kind of knew what you wanted to do a month ago, maybe even like longer than a month ago. And we're recording this in mid-May. So we're kind of like 2 solid months into this. But I felt like you, as a high-end manufacturer, had it figured out a month ago. So why don't you, just for purposes of kind of introducing, like, you know, what you do for Micron and who Micron is, you want to kind of tell us about Micron, describe the workforce, and go ahead and give us a little bit about the decision they came to related to what you're going to do with the workforce. I know it's kind of split, remote and non-remote, since you have a facility, but do you want to dig in for us a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on, first of all. And Micron is an automated manufacturer of machines that largely make med pharma equipment. And we've got about 170 folks here in the U.S., here in Denver. And of that 170 folks, about 100 of them are in engineering and professional type roles. And then we've got about 70 that are out on a shop floor, basically building the machines that we make for customers. And Micron's a global company, so we had the benefit of our Swiss counterparts. We're a Swiss-owned company, and they were a month or two ahead of what was happening in the U.S. relative to COVID, and so we leaned on their experiences and what they were dealing with, and we continue to, quite frankly, as we try to plan for how to get through this kind of crazy time.
Yeah, no, it's good stuff. It's good stuff. And, you know, we forget, like my take is that, you know, kind of like the talent, I'll call it the talent elite. Like, you know, when we read articles like at Inc. magazine, Ed, and we read about these things. I mean, Micron's very high-end manufacturing, but regardless of the level and the complexity of the manufacturing, we tend to forget about, like, when we see these return to work articles or, you know, remote work articles, we tend to forget about manufacturing, and we tend to forget about retail, et cetera, et cetera. We kind of write those things for white collar professionals. So tell me a little bit, Ed, let's dig into the decision. You know, I think it's an important point that, you know, you've got, you know, the Swiss, you know, and other European teammates that are kind of part of your family. So they were experiencing this before. So certainly that helps. But again, I feel like your leadership team at Micron was very definitive. Has it been more than a month, Ed, when you made the decision that kind of in a real definitive way that for the people who could work remote, you were going to allow that because regular work probably wasn't coming back anytime soon, if ever? Has it been a month? Let's establish kind of the timeline a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's been maybe a little more than 45 days,
Yeah.
not been 2 months, but yeah, it has definitely been a while, and it feels longer than it's actually been, just
Yeah,
on,
I think
on how much was going on.
Yeah, I think for all of us. So, I mean, you're like literally 2 to 3 weeks into this thing. You're probably learning from your European, counterparts. But let's dig into a little bit about the decision about what you did with remote work not going away. Would you mind just kind of outline like the folks in the facility and then all the folks who could work remote, kind of what that split is? Like define that in a little more granular detail for us. And then tell us why on the remote side, kind of more in depth what the decision was, what you were going to ask your folks who could work remote to do, and kind of why you made the decision early that, hey, we're like making the move and we're not planning on these folks being back to the old normal anytime soon.
Sure. So I think we were probably like most manufacturing facilities and sites in the sense that pre-COVID, we had 90 to 95% of our staff coming into the site every single day.
Right.
And that didn't matter whether you were in the engineering space or you were out on the shop floor. And so when the COVID thing kind of presented itself and hit us squarely, we knew that we needed to social distance. We were concerned about having all those people into the office. And so we immediately pushed anyone that could work from home into a work from home scenario.
Right.
And, in hindsight, it's nice to say that we were prepared for that. But I think at the time, it made a lot of folks nervous.
Right.
And so we pushed as many folks into a work from home scenario as could pull it off and made some technology changes and some access changes so that we could assure that those people could be productive from home. And then we really took a hard look at the site and the way it was organized. We have a pretty open office plan in engineering, people sitting close together, a lot of collaboration areas where large groups of people, small groups of people could gather. And we knew that wasn't going to work for us post-COVID. So our general manager pointed that out to the leadership team almost right out of the gate that, one, we had really tore the lid off of a work from home in a way that Micron and this site had never dealt with. And two, for the folks that were still coming into the office, we had a lot of work to do in terms of reconfiguring work schedules, wedging doors open so people didn't have to touch things,
Right.
increasing hygiene standards, just lots of different changes that we made, in addition to mask wearing, fever scanning, and all the other things that I know a lot of other folks are doing. So, it was a big change for the people that went into a work from home scenario, but it was also a big change for the people that were continuing to come into the office.
Let's dig into both those things real quick, Ed. So you're listening to Ed Baldwin. I'm Kris Dunn. Segment on HR Famous talking about return to work. Ed's the HR leader at Micron. Let's dig into two things, Ed, real quick. So you kind of define the decision where you send as many people home as you could to work remotely, and that's very familiar in America. You made the decision super early that almost all of those people weren't going to go back to what normal was in terms of coming into the facility who could work remote. What do you feel like? I heard you mention, your general manager feels like he might have been like, a big leader in this. But what do you attribute the early call that you were going to fully commit to people working remotely as much as possible? And, there's some people that, probably want to be back in the office now, but what do you attribute, like from a business case perspective, not bringing those folks back in who could work remote?
Whether you're a payroll pro or an employee wanting to understand your paycheck better, we've got you covered. Tune into It's About Payroll for expert insights on payroll trends and compliance, or Check out It's About Your Paycheck, the go-to podcast for employees looking to understand their pay and rights. 2 great shows, 2 great hosts. Listen now, brought to you by Work Defined, where payroll meets clarity.
So there are probably 2 things that come to mind when I think about that. The first is that we thought pushing, 60%, 70% of our workforce into a work from home scenario that we really hadn't thought about pre-COVID. We thought that was going to be a disaster. And it turned out that it really wasn't. People embraced it. People figured it out. If they didn't have the accesses they need or the tools they needed to work from home, they came asking. And so, what we thought was an impossibility in our business became a reality really quickly.
Got it.
And our people embraced it as well. And so we knew full well that we weren't going to get to the end of COVID, whenever that is. And we were going to say, all right, great, welcoming everybody back. And that It was going to go back to a pre-COVID time. The second thing that I would point to that we did, which in hindsight was really, really smart, is that we have a relatively small executive leadership team, and we were meeting on a daily basis, and we continue to meet on a daily basis. And because of the speed by which the changes were coming in terms of the COVID environment and various legislative groups making decisions about, how to address COVID, as an executive team, we were addressing and dealing with those things on a daily basis. And we had a forum to do that on a daily basis, where even if we would have been doing it weekly, we would have been really delayed in making decisions.
Yeah, makes sense. So you didn't fail, first and foremost. It wasn't the failure that, like, in your worst, fears, you thought it would be. I think a lot of people in America are experiencing that. And then you had speed for the decision making. I want to transition real quick to the people in the facility. Quick answer for you, and then I'll transfer to these folks. Does decreasing density in the facility is that also a driving force not to bring the remote folks back?
Yes, absolutely. So we'd be packing them in if we brought people back in the same way that we were pre-COVID. And absolutely, we know we can't do that.
Yeah. It's interesting because I think a lot of people, Ed, are struggling with if they want to bring people back, what does the density look like? What do all these practices look like? Makes total sense that you kind of split it up. I mean, there's, the 70 or so, I think, was the number that have to be in the facility, and makes a lot of sense that you would decrease that density and get the, some built-in social distancing, but with that move to have the folks remain remote. Let's talk about the people in the facility on the floor. You mentioned temperature scanners, things like that. Give us a couple of bullet points in terms of how you've changed your practices to try and maximize the number of people that remain fully healthy. I know temperature scanners are in there. You mentioned doors, being open to minimize touches. Anything else you've done? Just like what's a couple of other things on the laundry list just that you've done? I'm sure masks, right? I think you may have mentioned that. Yep. What are some of the things that you've done to keep it as healthy as possible on the shop floor?
Yeah. So first and foremost, we run only one shift here. And so the first thing we did is we started modifying work schedules, whether we were going to 410s or some people coming in early, some people coming in later, depending on what project you were working on. And that created less people in the building at any point in time. So we did that, and that was helpful. We certainly upped our hygiene game. And so we brought in cleaning services during the day to wipe down common areas, touch surfaces, wedged open doors because we didn't have the same confidentiality issues, so that we minimized just any common area. We minimized traffic into those areas. And then, we mandated social distance. We couldn't do that in all cases just for people to perform their jobs, but we were really diligent about that. And then we mandated mask wearing also as a means of protecting our folks. And then we really secured the perimeter in the sense of if visitors were coming in, and certainly that decreased a great deal because of the travel restrictions, but
Right.
And vendors or contractors, people we were interviewing, if they came into the building, they had to complete a checklist, wear a mask, and be fever scanned. And then just recently, we have a completely different employee entrance protocol for all of our folks. So you can't get into the building today without being fever scanned.
Got it. Got it. Makes sense. And you know what? One of the things that's really interesting about that is you were able to open up, some secure doors because, correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of your IP now wasn't in an office. It's on a secure network as those folks work remotely, correct?
Yep, exactly right.
Yeah. Smart. Okay. Ed Baldwin, HR leader at Micron, talking to us on HR Famous. I'll get you out of here on two things, Ed. First of all, one of the things I know you had to be concerned about as an HR leader is kind of the physical distance and the lack of camaraderie and just kind of all those informal like walk-bys from the folks who are remote versus the folks who remain in your facility. Anything special you're doing to try and make sure that those folks see each other or hear from each other as much as possible?
Yeah, that's been a big struggle, admittedly, because one of the things that Micron really prides itself on is the amount of collaboration and the amount of interface that
Right.
Pre-COVID was certainly face-to-face. And so we've tried to leverage as many of the technologies that are available, collaborative tools, et cetera, for being able to substitute to some degree those walk-bys. And even the folks that are working from home, if they have a need or desire to come into the office for project-related reasons to connect with people, we've certainly made that available to them. And that's been the means by which we've attempted and tried to remain as collaborative and as community-focused as we were pre-COVID.
Yeah, makes sense. And, to your point, I love the fact you're like honest enough to say, yeah, that's a struggle, right? We got all this other good stuff done to the best of our ability in a reaction to COVID. And I think that's going to be the gap for a lot of people. And I think, as you kind of outlined, it just kind of comes down to you got to keep experimenting and you got to keep trying to change the formula to the extent you can to get all that stuff done. Okay, I got one last question for you, Ed, and it's a doozy. Okay, how did you growing up in the heartland of Iowa, just a small town Iowa kid, how did that prepare you to be a part of that leadership team at Micron and figure all this out? I'm tongue in cheek, of course, but I've got to like razz you a little bit as a Northeast Missouri kid who grew up in a small town. Or just young Ed Baldwin. He had no idea he was going to be dealing with a pandemic and wearing a face mask, did he?
No, not even close. But I do want to call out my Iowa roots. Go Hawks! I'm as big a Hawk fan as any. And in terms of the growing up thing, I've coined it a little bit Mayberry-ish. That's probably a little bit of embellishment and a little bit of a stretch, but really, really fortunate to grow up in small town Iowa. I think a wholesome upbringing for sure. And, in terms of the tie to what I'm doing today, one interesting element is the fact that my father was a 40-year UAW member. And when I went off to university and decided that maybe HR was the way to go and started taking
labor relations classes.
Yeah, taking labor relations classes. Let's just say it made for interesting dinner conversation. And and the thing I recall the most maybe from my dad is don't forget where you come from, boy.
That's right. Ed Baldwin, black sheep at the family dinner table in Iowa as he returns from university in his first job. Absolutely killer. I'll say this, Ed. I think if somebody would have told you that you'd be wearing a mask and you'd be pointing a temperature scanner at somebody entering work, you would have said, that's crazier than this Back to the Future movie that I just watched and everybody loves. That's crazier than Doc whoever on Back to the Future. Okay. Go ahead, Ed. I'm sorry.
Absolutely. Listen, thanks so much for having me on. Really appreciate it. I'm a big fan of HR Famous, and you and Sackett and Jay Lee are doing great stuff. So thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, Ed Baldwin from Micron. Look him up on LinkedIn. Also writes at Fistful of Talent. Ed, thanks so much, and we'll talk soon.
Yeah, thanks again.
Okay, that's it for this episode of HR Famous. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review Apple Podcast, Spotify, Google Play, wherever you get your podcast. Be sure and do that. This is HR Famous. I'm Kris Dunn. Until next time, we are out.